Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Musonius Rufus's Lecture 13, which gets divided into a first part, often labeled A, and then a second part labeled B, but which is really one main lecture, gets translated in its title as What is the Chief End in Marriage? And if we're being a little bit more literal about it, we could translate it as the main matter, or if we really wanted to, the sort of title heading, the cardinal issue, the kephalion. This is a term that gets used to talk about like the top subject headings of something. So what is marriage really about according to Musonius? So looking at it from a philosophical perspective. There's lots of ideas about what marriage is supposed to be concerned with that Musonius thinks are actually off base. We'll talk about a few of them in just a bit. So in the very first portion of this lecture, he's going to say, listen, the main matter, the kephalion, in marriage is actually going to be a community or sharing, a koinonion, right? So literally having things in common with each other, and not just having in common like being friends who share a hobby or something like that, because it is a community of life or in life, biou, right? So bios means living, but it also has to do with the way that you live. So it's a commonality, a sharing in a life together, and of generation of children, geneseos, right? So the production or the bringing into being, paidon, of children, of kids, quite literally. And the translation in English can be a little bit misleading because it says, he thought the primary end of marriage is community of life with a view to the procreation of children. When in the Greek, it's a community, koinonion, and both life and generation of children are in the same genitive case, and there's just a and in between them. So it looks more like community with two purposes that go together. Living together, a common life, and having children. And then immediately after that, he's going to say the husband and wife should come together for the purpose of making a life in common, procreating children, and then we get an additional qualification here. So they come together for these two things, but also the state of regarding or thinking, deeming, everything that they have to be common, koinona, right? So it's interesting. It's not just a common life, it's also common property, you could say. He says nothing peculiar or private idion to one or the other. But it's not just property. He goes so far as to say not even their bodies, their soma. So this goes both ways. It's not just that the wife is the property of the husband. The husband's the property of the wife, too. Musonius is very committed to an equality in this. And he says, the birth of a human being is something it's put here as marvelous, megala, something big, something important. But making babies is not sufficient, not enough to have a marriage, not hikanon in Greek. Why? Because you don't have to get married to quite literally have a sumplokein, entwinement. Think about people putting their limbs together and having sex, right? You just have to have sex, and you can make babies just like animals do, right? They don't actually have cat weddings and dog weddings and wild bee weddings or anything like that. They just get it on. So he says, that's a part of marriage, but it's actually not sufficient for a real marriage. So what do you actually need to have? Here's where he's setting forth a kind of elevated ideal of relationships. You need to have a full life together, symbiosin, right? So we see once again that term bios in there, but now it's a life with each other, and it needs to be a full one, right? Now this is actually translated as perfect companionship here in the English, but literally living your life with the other person, which is what you do with a companion. And then a little bit of a misleading translation. In one sense, we'll talk about how much it is in just a moment. So the term katamonia, in this case katamonian in the accusative, is translated as mutual love, katamonian for each other, alelois. It's really better translated not as love, which might give rise to the sense of like thinking erotic or romantic love, but actual care, taking care of the other person, thinking about what they need. Now, is that distinct from love? No, it might be an expression of what we typically call love. So it's not a bad translation, but this is something that you're supposed to have in a marriage, right? Perfect companionship, mutual love of the man and the woman, both in health and sickness and under all conditions. You may recognize that in health and sickness as part of typical marriage vows. Well, here's where he's bringing it up, right? So you're supposed to be concerned for the other person. And he says, when you actually have this, that is a great thing, This care for each other can be perfect, teleos. It can be shared completely with each other. And he says it was for this as well as for having children that both entered on marriage. And if you have a case like this, then both partners are actually, instead of being like, well, I did 10 things for you, so you should do 10 things for me, they're actually going to strive to outdo the other in devotion. And he says a marriage like this is beautiful, and is worthy of being emulated. Now, is that the case for most marriages? No. He says, in a lot of cases, people look to their own interests and neglect the other person, or, what is worse, when one is so minded and lives in the same house but fixes their attention elsewhere and doesn't pull together with their yoke mate or agree. If that's going to be the case, then he says the sharing, the union, is doomed to disaster, right? Theorista, koinonia. So the koinonia, the sharing, the connection with each other, the community, is going to degenerate, to break down. And he says that if they do live together, their common interests don't go well. Eventually, one of two things happens. They either separate entirely from each other, they divorce, or they remain together and, what a phrase, suffer what is worse than loneliness, than being a hermit, eremia, right? Being totally on your own. And isn't that often the case for many unsuccessful marriages? So that's the first part of this lecture. The second part, he's concerned with thinking about, okay, so what are some practical implications of this? Well, what's the basis for getting together in marriage? And he says, those who want to think about marriage, if what they're really interested in is having this homonoia, so that is a term that gets translated as agreement and harmony and a number of other things. So homo, same, noia, mindset, having the same mindset as the other person. What is actually going to produce that? This is a thing that a lot of people should think about quite a bit before they do get into a marriage. Will it be your family, whether, either one be of high-born parents, or, upper class or something like that? Will it be wealth, great possessions, physical traits, whether one or the other have, physical attractiveness? He says, well, neither wealth nor beauty nor high birth is effective in promoting this partnership of interest or sympathy, this homonoia, and they're not significant for producing children either. So what do you actually need? So he's going to say, well, certain things in the body, certain things in the soul. For the body, it's enough that it be healthy. And you might say, well, wait a second, what about in the sickness and health? Well, you enter into the marriage in some degree of health, of normal appearance. You don't need people to be models or have, incredible looks or anything like that, and capable of work. This is really important for Musonius because he thinks that both men and women should be engaging in actual work with each other. Whether they're in a marriage or not, they should be able to do the tasks that are set to them. Okay, so that's good. That's the body. What about the soul? Well, this is where it's even more important. He says that with respect to the soul, what you want is that it's been habituated, deotatas, to two different virtues that he singles out in particular. It's translated here as self-control. Really, it's temperance, sophrosune, and justice, dikaiosune. Both people need to have this in the marriage if it's going to be successful. And then he says, and other virtues too, as well, that lie within us. So he says, these qualities should be present in both the husband and the wife. There is no the woman needs to look a certain way. The guy should, have certain qualities developed. She should have certain qualities developed. No, it's the same across the board. Why? Well, without sympathy of mind and character between husband and wife, once again, that homonoia, what marriage could actually be good? What partnership could be advantageous? How could two human beings who are not good people, who are base, actually have this sympathy of spirit with the other person? Or if you have one good person, how are they going to be in harmony with the person who's bad? He's got a great metaphor here. No more than a crooked piece of wood could be fitted to a straight one, or two crooked ones be put together. The crooked one will not fit another crooked one, and much less the opposite of crooked with a straight one. So, a wicked person, a bad person, won't be friendly to a wicked one because they don't agree with them. They don't have homonoia, once again, and much less with a good person. So if you want to have a successful marriage, if you want to enjoy this stuff that a marriage is really about, you're going to have to be at least decent, if not already good and virtuous people before you enter into the marriage so that you can grow in that together.